Okay, so I had basically had the pleasure of reading this thing they call Deviant King by Raina Kent, and as far as books I've written, it's not the books I've read, it's not the worst. I just don't want to do it again. There are some things that really annoyed me, but I was interested enough to read, halfway through the second book, where I basically just gave up and went, nah, no, no way in hell can this be real. Like, how can this happen? I'll tell you why. Right, so my biggest issue with this book, I would have to say my, three big issues is one, pride is not a personality trait. This goes to the main character, Elsa. I know. I could not deal with that. Anyway, the second thing is that there's a lot of misunderstandings that goes in the book, and I really hate books where they base things on misunderstanding, but they never really talk about it because I can't even say, was it a misunderstanding? No. Also, flashbacks. I'm not reading a thriller. Why were there so many flashbacks to her past, which we know nothing about? Anyway, but I was sort of interested in this, which is why I read the second book, and then just came halfway through because it truly makes no sense. I just don't get it. So, let's talk about the book itself. The actual book is it's a love story between Elsa, the girl, and Aiden, the guy. When I was reading it, I did not like Asa. So she has this whole I'm not like other girls, which I can deal with. Pretty much all these books and these genres do have that same type. But what really pissed me off about Elsa is just how bland she was. She was so boring, but she was destined that the rest of the world hated her, and so when Elsa, in the first book, we find out that Elsa has moved schools, and she goes into this new school, and she's really excited to, have her chance, and then she meets Aiden, and Aiden's automatically like, I will destroy you, and because Aiden's, really popular, the king of the high school, everyone, too, is also like, you know what, this is free reign, we can tear Elsa apart. But Elsa, so for 2 years now, she's been very much bullied, though they don't really go into that detail because I guess it's what happens afterwards. And so she makes friends with Kim, which she meets on the first day, and Kim is another outcast of the school, but we don't really know why. She never properly says. So anyway, Aiden King is his surname. Kim is very dark and intense. He's a bit of a sadist. In those 2 years where she's being bullied because of him, she believes because of him, she develops a hate for him, and I'm just apparently she references somewhere later on in the book that they spent 2 years glaring at each other, and I'm just like, how did you not expect this if he spent 2 years glaring at you? Frankly, it's very childish. So they spent 2 years glaring at each other, and the sign of third year, which is the final year, which is the story takes place, he decides to endly abruptly decide to stop growing and decides to talk to her. And in the first encounter, her best friend Kim is bullied by one of his guys in his group. I forgot his name, Xander. They have their own book. But she decides to film it, so then she has some proof and she can blackmail them to leave her alone and her friend. So what happens is that Kim sees this, and Kim's like, hey, Xander, she's about to blackmail you, and they're like, ha 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 ha, so funny, give me the phone. She's like, no, I won't give you the phone, give me the phone, give me the phone, give me the phone. And so she puts it in her bra. Do you see where this is going? To make sure that he won't come and get the phone. And he somehow has the longest thing to unbutton each of her buttons to get to her bra, and I'm just like, that is 2 buttons, but that was a 2-minute thing. That's frankly way too long for me. So he then goes into her bra and gets the phone out, and she is shocked. She's saddened by this. And while he's there, he sees that she has a scar across her neck. So what he decides to do, is bite the scar as a sort of marker either way, he bites in her. She's hurting and she feels very embarrassed by the situation, so she starts to cry, and he licks her tears, which I was just like, no. So what we know about Aiden is that he's dark and intense and possessive. That's the end for Aiden. You know what? Aiden wasn't a bad character. He was very two-dimensional, but I'm used to that. So he's just like another alpha male. I also thought that maybe they should have set this book somewhere else. I didn't think it needed to be in high school, but let's get back to Elsa. So Elsa, or as everyone calls her, Frozen, is an ice queen. Because apparently in those 2 years of being bullied, she has garnered a reputation for being, for everyone thinking that, because everyone thinks that she's better than everyone, and that she when you go through her in a dome, she believes she must keep her head held high, and she wouldn't allow the bullies to win, and she wouldn't even think about them. So everyone sort of sees her as this untouchable ice queen, very unapproachable, which I think is key to, like, these things. Like, she says that everyone hates her, and she says it's because of Aiden. But then, everyone else thinks that she's spent 2 years having no contact with everyone and glaring at the entire school because she thinks they are all, like, spineless cowards with no personality to do anything that Kim says. But obviously, that's not true, and I think that is also very detrimental to her. Again, the first friend she made was Kim, who was an outcast at the school. Probably didn't help. She didn't get to know the law of the land, and I get it. She was meant to be like, I mean, if it was another book, I'd say, so she's a badass bitch, and she make up her own rules. But Elsa's not. Elsa is just, she's the opposite of it. So Elsa has a very stable home life with her aunt and her uncle. I did like the uncle, his Jackson, and they have their own company, and the company's like biggest client is Kim's family's company. So either way, so there's that. So basically, Elsa's family is their motto is teamwork, which is nice, but still when Elsa talks about her family, she's very, well, because they are an uncle, she's very grateful for them taking her in, because as a child, what we know now, what she thinks is that her family house was set on fire and she was, well, the only survivor. But there's something more, which is to do with the flashbacks, also to the past. I think they adopted her when she was like 7, so I'm just like, how do you remember so much shit? But yeah, she does. And so the aunt and uncle both went to Cambridge, and because of that, Elsa goes to this school, this academy, because she thinks that he has very good chances of her getting into Cambridge. Which I'm like, you know, okay, fine, have a go. And she's solely determined on the fact that she just wants to get to school and wants to get to Cambridge. But then I'm just like, why? Her only reason she really wants to go to Cambridge is because of her aunt and uncle, and I get it, but I think that, like, this makes up half her personality, and, like, it makes it show that she's, you know, she's determined, that she's smart, but she's not really smart, and going to, like, and I get she wants to go there because it's a place where her aunt and uncle met, who they fell in love, and where they got smart, but still, I don't particularly support this. I think it takes up way too much time. So let's go back to Aiden, because it is a love story. So from that original meeting, Aiden now decides to call her sweetheart and talk to her in public without showing, instead of just glaring at her across the room. Anyway, it's quite, they're not good interactions, like, which I'm going to be an expert, but she's always fighting. Anyway, and then he says that he's fine with her fighting, because what he's really into is the struggle. And I'm like, okay, you're meant to be smart, so don't fucking struggle. Because, like, she says this to her pals, they always do, like, oh, he'll get bored, I can play this game. But, you know, playing a game, like, requires for one to actually play the game, not just say you are going to play the game. Which, again, with Elsie, so fickle. And part of the reason that Elsa is so fickle is because of her pride. Which, pride is not a personality trait. I see a lot of authors do this, and I don't understand it. Pride is never a good personality trait. I mean, I guess you could talk, it's an honor, but the fact that Elsa pretty much has nothing but her pride, and this happens so a lot. You get these characters, they've been through so much shit, so all they have is the pride, and they have nothing else, and they can't lose the pride. But I'm just like, pride is probably the worst character trait to have because it does absolutely nothing to develop you as a person. I get it, you're going to be stubborn if you're prideful, but if you've got nothing to be prideful about, why are you so prideful? But anyway, the pride is used as a backbone to sort of move the story along because, I mean, if she was just a normal character without pride, without her pride getting in the way, pretty much none of this shit would have happened. Anyway, so because of this all new attention, Elsa eventually asks the guy, King, is like, what do you find so special about me? And he says it's because she has a pussy that he doesn't have. And I thought, for God's sake, this is absurd. Like, are you kidding me? Like, what's so special about her that you don't have her pussy? You could say that to, like, any fucking girl. It makes no sense. And then, so he bites her again. She decides that enough is enough, so she kicks him. Which, yes, for a bit I was like, badass moments, but I was like, long-wise, not very wise, but hey, he's not gonna go away, so why not? And then again, so then they have more interactions with his friends, which he has a little gang of people who sort of party and do other things. Basically, I cannot stand parties in any of these books, but this is an elite high school, so they have elite parties with butlers, and she gets to go to one of the parties, and she's like, oh, they're so fancy, and I'm like, girl, aren't you fancy? like, what's your biggest dream? To go Cambridge because your family members went there. Girl sounds a bit fancy, but she's always like, they're not fancy like me. Once again, I have to point out too, so they start this little devil's tango, where he's there and she's like, go, but he's still there, and, he's got connections, and the way, I should point out, they're at this party because the guy has learned that he can use her best friend, Kim, who originally was friends with him in the past, but something happened that they're not friends now, and she's like neighbors with one of the guys, that she can use Kim in order to get to Elsa. Elsa decides to, her response to this is to date his best friend Xander, who has a thing going on with, as I've said before, Kim. So this doesn't make Kim happy, and it certainly doesn't make Kim happy. And Kim doesn't even entertain the idea, because as soon as they do this, they just decide to walk through the canteen together to show everyone that they are an item. They get to his table, and King just punches Xander, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, he's never done that! Like, what is this? What is this?" And she's like, "Ah," and I thought, well, that lasted long, and then they go home together, and then the next day he turns up at her house and introduces himself to his parents, and her auntie isn't very happy about it because she knows something. But anyway, you'll find out. So they played this game of tango. It's essentially what the book is centered around, this little love, which I'm fine with, but I didn't say they played well. So both characters have a thing for chess, and I get it. People who play chess are meant to be smart. I don't get it, because I've never actually fucking played chess. I don't get how to play it. And Aiden's a psychopath because, he plays chess by himself. Wow. And the girl is smart, and she also plays chess. And along with playing chess, she also loves Chinese war books, which she references to the book when she's thinking of like a plan, but she never really follows through her plan. So Chinese war books, she talks about these a lot, but in one chapter she actually reads one, and she says so the thing about the Chinese war book was Chinese war books, it's actually just one Chinese book, The Art of War. And the biggest thing from The Art of War is that you should be close to your enemy and you should see things from your enemy's shoe. And she says that herself, and then she goes, no, I don't want to do that though, because that's the thing about bullies. Once you know that you can't give them the time of day, and you can't have time to they're nonsensical, they don't make any sense, so you shouldn't waste your time trying to know how they feel. And I'm just like, he's not nonsensical though. You have already addressed this fact. So, what's the point? And I think the author's obviously, it's meant to show that she's smart and she's worldly, she reads Chinese war books, but then she doesn't take any of the tips, completely ignores them. Frankly, if she did take the tips, I still think they would be slightly useless, because what's she going to do with 40 tips about Chinese warfare in the Middle Ages? I mean, yes, I get, the enemy one is a good tip, and I guess that's the one she was meant to be focused on, but, she didn't. And the fact that it's one book, I'm like, it's one book. One book cannot help you do this. So I think, yes, that's basically the book. But in this Devil Tangos, Aiden basically wins by fucking her, and then her body... So if you haven't guessed, Aiden basically wins by fucking her repeatedly, and her body loves it, though her mind hates it. Her mind loves it too, but, don't tell anyone. So that's basically it, and they do some sort of, he's like, be mine, you can choose to be my queen or my pawn, again a reference to chess, and she doesn't choose to be anything, which is actually the right choice. I'm just like, think about it, girl, you've got a year and then you will be out, and then yay, bye bye Aiden Kane, because Aiden Kane wants to go to Oxford. All his family are Oxford people. Look, okay, again with Elsa. So, in this game, basically, we find out she has nightmares. Like everyone else. She has nightmares, but Aiden King makes them better when she sleeps with him, which is like, okay. She also likes healthy foods, but she has like a really strict, I don't really call it zero boring food diet, zero fat, I don't know what she eats, frankly. Jam-free sugar with some biscuits and buckwheat salad. Are just some of the examples we got from the book. And so, to be kind, Aiden makes sure the schools now sells this healthy food that she can eat, so she can eat at the canteen with all her friends, because she normally doesn't. Again, this lost memory thing is played up particularly towards the end, and what I can gather from this is that essentially her parents died, and I think one of them killed one of the other, or they abused her, but her childhood wasn't very good, and what she finds out is that her aunt and uncle, she used to be quite violent and have all these flashbacks, where an aunt and uncle paid for an hypnotist to hypnotize her to be more calm, but because she didn't, apparently it's meant to, he didn't hypnotize her to forget, but because she really just didn't want to recount it, she made herself forget it, and now all she has is these flashbacks because she made herself forget, and I'm just like, wow, how did you do that? So that's my biggest complaint. She could have been far more developed. I think that the plot, again, to the Lost Memories, could have been more developed, but I also don't think the book was about that. Well, it sort of was, because what she finds out at the end, it is a cliffhanger. At the end, she basically finds out that she goes to Aiden's house, and Aiden's dad is talking to one of Aiden's cousin, and she's like, Aiden's cousin's like a mean girl of the school, but anyway, she was completely nastily with fun. So Aiden's cousin is talking to her dad, and they're like, you said she'd be gone, why is she still hanging around? And what she finds out from this conversation is that Aiden planned this from the beginning. He knew who she was as soon as she walked into the school. But she doesn't know. I mean, she does know why. Does she know why? How have I forgot this? Anyway, she feels very betrayed, and the reason, does she know why? I think she does know why. I think they talk about it in the conversation. But it's for revenge. She just doesn't know particular revenge about, but I'll tell you. So, Elsa's name is Elsa Steele. Well, that's her real name. And Elsa Steele is to do with her parents. Her parents apparently killed Aiden's king mum. So they're going to get revenge through their only living relative, Elsa Steele. Which, I guess, yeah. And so in the second, so that was a cliffhanger. She's like, oh no, what am I going to do? Everyone betrays me. So in the so in the second book, which I only read up to half, I should say. In the second book, she breaks up with Aiden because of this news, and she's like, I can't deal with this, I can't. And then she gets like a new guy. There's a new guy at school. This new guy is like a dream, quite boring, plays the guitar, wants to go to Cambridge, and they're like, yeah, I want to go to Cambridge too. And she goes into school, and she does like, and Aiden turns up, and he's like, hi, sweetheart. But she does some like public show of like how they're not together, and no one really cares because he still claims they're together. Yay. She's still going to all these parties, hanging out with all his friends, and I'm just like, she didn't do that before. I didn't think she really, and she said that, she did say that if the breakup, one reason she said about the breakup is the fact that she has to end, like, with his friends, and I'm just like, but you said it's a clique and he's the king, and those are his knights. Which I do not understand, so why are you hanging out with his knights? Of course it's going to blow up in her face, but anyway, so he uses these opportunities to get close, and then, like, I say get close, he basically says, look, I don't need you to want to be mine, but you're mine. And she's like, no one's, and they have more sex. And then he tells her, and then she is having more nightmares, they get worse. She visits the hypnotist, and she's like, I want you to make me remember. And she's had some hard times, so she stops eating and starts running. I mean, she said running was a hobby in the first book, but she didn't do it like she did in the second book, and no one basically notices because you find out that her home life is not so perfect because, well, while her aunt and auntie are nice, they leave her alone for most of the time, and, and she normally hangs out with Kim, but, Kim wants to be cool and do the cool stuff and hang out with the guys, and she doesn't want to do that so much, but she didn't really hang out with Kim that much, I would say. But Kim has her own shit going on. So this basically leaves her in a space where she's quite vulnerable, and of course Aiden notices this, so he makes his move and he's like, be mine, be mine. And she decides that, you know what, fine, if you tell me what the whole thing was about, the whole revenge stuff with his parents, and and he goes, fine. And he goes fine because his dad gives an ultimatum, like, make her yours, do the revenge, or I'll do it. Again, I don't even know what this revenge thing about, but for definite sure, basically Aiden's mum also, she has a chat with his housekeeper, and Aiden's mum wasn't also that straight in the head, and she was quite mean. And quite mean to Aiden. This obviously had a big impact, but I also, and the same thing, and we also have a story that Steel and King Industries were competing, and they were ruthless with each other in the ambition to be like the best, and in sort of this ambition, his mom was a casualty in the war, and I also think that his family had something to do with the house burning down, which she was surviving. Also, we find out more in detail about her nightmares, and she was like locked in a basement, and there's the mother, which is why I think that the mother or the father, but one of the parents killed each other because one of the parents is referred to as the one we don't talk about. There's also a creepy uncle, who is the question in the dream. She gets a flower, it's a lovely flower, she's outside, and she's like, Mum's wearing red, red's her favourite colour, she's always nice when she's wearing red, so I'm going to give her this red flower. And then this uncle comes down, he's like, is that what you think? Ha 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 ha. And this uncle comes in after having an argument with one of her parents about the company, and he's like, stop it, we're going too far. One of them's like, stop it, we're going too far. And he's like, no, don't you want to be in the top? And something like, you're fired, blah, blah, blah. So I guess that's why he's being such a downer to the kid. And then, basically, that's the important stuff, because from the rest of the book, all they do is fuck. Frankly, it was too much fucking for me. It was way too much. Every single chapter, they would fuck, they would go somewhere. They made a deal that was, every single time I tell you something, you allow me to turn to you. So, he would tell her like a slip of information. I mean, we would get slip of information, and they would fuck. And frankly, by halfway through, I was just like, look, this is just getting boring. again, they're seen more together. Their relationship develops. He admits some vulnerabilities, like how um, he's never felt this way before with a girl, and he feels that he really needs her, which again I find so predictable. Like, he knew. Like, so everyone, when people first meet her, like his cousins first meet her, and they're like, oh, you're Aiden's obsession. And apparently he has been obsessing over her for these entire 2 years. He's been glaring at her. And like Xander, his best friend, like described it as like, oh, the reason we're bullied was because he was getting rid of the competition. And so he could make himself like the white knight. And I'm just like, what? I guess. I mean, yes, I guess. And that's why I think like it's so childish, because he meets her and he's like, I hate you. But then everyone runs like, oh, he has an obsession for her for 2 years, and you know they get seen all together. People think that they're now in a like relationship, and then I don't know, the guy, the nice guy that wanted to go to Cambridge. Everyone sort of forgets about him. I thought that maybe he had a connection to her past, and she doesn't tell. She gets less close and less talkative with her parents. She spends her time fucking Aiden, but I guess they were not her parents, her aunt, uncle. But I guess they were never there, so who knows? And yeah. I was actually really excited for this book, because I thought it was like Paper Princess, and I love that. But it just, it wasn't enough, and at the same time, it did like one of the cardinal sins for me. It tried to be too much with their memories. I like, if it explained Elsa as just a normal girl with like an abusive past, I could have dealt with that. But the flashbacks, the hypnotism, the fact that like they were fucking for information, to be fair, that alone as a premise sounds okay, but he would tell her like a sentence, like half a sentence, and they would fuck. Like, come on. No. Which is why I say as a whole, I'm not a fan of this book. Pride is not, it tried to do too much, but at the same time was too little. It didn't live up to anything. And I just want to leave you all with the message that pride is not and should never be a personality trait. Like, Elsa was just felt so flat. I mean, Aiden was also flat, but because he was so basic, I was like he said nothing that was remotely shocking. I know the chess by himself then was meant to make him look like a psychopath and cool, but I'm just like, he's straight for intention. Oh my god. So basically, one thing I hated in this is that the social media of choice for some reason is Instagram, and they all have Instagram, and Aiden has like an amazing Instagram with loads of followers, and she all stalks him on there, and he I kid you not, he sits there doing like ridiculous, like, you know, man motivational quotes about like the scenario, how like a king always wins and stuff like that. He does like his quote stuff, and then when he's about to make a move, he basically releases pictures of, so like for one example, like when she broke up with him in public, I think he released a picture of like Game On. He also had one thing where it was like a picture of just like a pawn, which pretty much shows attitude towards her. And it's like, I thought, is he communicating with her through these chess pawns? I was just like, really? He also had another chess Instagram where it's the king standing tall and the queen is lying on the ground. And then I think they don't talk about this, but he makes a referring comment like in chess how the queen is the most important player, which is why she's lying on the floor, like with the king standing up, and obviously he thinks he's the king. So that was also annoying, but yeah, read it if you want. It's, the first one is okay. I could not stand the second one, and just, yeah, it's a book. She did her best. But yeah, that's it. It's a series. It has 5 books in it. Actually, I think it has 5 books in it, but I think from the 4th book it's about Kim and Xander. So that's that.